Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Amy here. I've got a short project share to share with you and a tutorial to go alongside. I've been creating some watercolour galaxy backgrounds and I'll show them to you first, and then I will show you kind of what I've used to create them. So this is the first one that I made, and this was inspired by a YouTube video. I don't remember who it was that made it. I found it was a really old video. But they kind of showed this process, so I will find it and link it in the description box below. So I did this one first with the pinks, the purples and the blues. Then I decided to have a little bit of an experiment. So for this one, for all of them I've used this Della & Rowney Aquafine watercolour pad, and all I did was just cut it in half to make it A5 size. I picked this up in Hobbycraft ages ago in a really old haul, and I've still got a couple of pads of it left. And then, please excuse the traffic outside, it's actually quite late, I don't understand why there's so much. And then these are the watercolours I used. Again, this was a Hobbycraft purchase, and I think I got these on sale when they were like a £5 or something really silly. This is the Artist Loft watercolour set. I know so many people have got this one, and that's how I created this one. And then I decided to have an experiment because I've actually got the Artist Loft metallic ones as well, so I used the same colour scheme but in the metallics and created this one. So it's quite shimmery and the colour's obviously much lighter. And then I decided, I'm really obsessed with the Northern Lights, so I decided to try and do kind of a green and blue Northern Light scheme, like colour scheme. Which way around looks better? That way, I'd say. So then I did that one, and I did that with the regular Artist Loft watercolour paints. So that's what I've created so far. I've just done those 3, and I am going to do a quick tutorial on how I made those. If you're interested in seeing that, then obviously stay tuned. I'm hoping to use these for card fronts. I've got some ideas of what I might do with these. Obviously there's a little bit of edge here, but that's just where it's been taped down. I would cut that off and neaten them up anyway. So I hope you like those. I'm really impressed with how they come out. It's the first time I've done anything like that, and I'm really quite pleased. So I will just show you how I did that, and I'll try and make it nice and quick for you. So all I've done is tape the watercolour paper down just using some old washi tape. This is that 15p Sainsbury's one. I'm going to zoom you in slightly, which I'm sure loads of us have got. So you need that. You need obviously a set of watercolours. So I'm going to try and arrange myself so that I'm all in frame. You need a selection of watercolour brushes. Now I've got these random brushes that I picked up in Hobbycraft in a really old haul, and I've got the 6, the 1 inch and the 1 brush there. I've also got some of the Derwent water brushes as well, but I've not been using this one as much, but I've got it here to hand if I want it. A little bit of toilet roll or kitchen roll. I've just got some toilet roll up here, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to peel some off, chuck it to the side, mostly for spillages, but also there's a little technique near the end. So let me just take off my lid. And the first thing, and the other thing you're going to need is obviously a pot of water. Don't forget that. I'm going to zoom out just slightly because I don't want you to feel too zoomed in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with this really large brush, and I'm not going to use any paint on it. I'm just going to make it really wet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the paper. So because this requires the wet on wet technique, I need to make my paper very wet. You don't want any beading of water, but you do want the whole paper to have a bit of a sheen. I'm going to bring my little, it's actually a little tea light holder, because I'm doing this on my bed at the minute, so I'm trying to use what I have upstairs. And I'd say, I can't remember how long these took me, but it wasn't very long at all. Sorry, I'm wearing my dressing gown, so I'm getting fluff everywhere. And I'm really pleased with how they come out. So once you've got your paper wet, you can set that brush aside, and then I'm going to go in here with the size 6 brush. And this is mostly what I'm going to be using. I'm going to start with my lightest colour. So I'm going to start with this pink here. I'm going to make it nice and wet. And the way I've done all of mine is I've kind of created that diagonal line across here. So I'm going to kind of drop in some of my lightest colour across diagonally. And I'm just going to keep doing that. You don't need to be neat about it, because you're going to be loading more and more paint as you go. but obviously add water as and when you need. And then once you're happy with how much of that colour you've laid down, you're going to start going in with the slightly darker shades. I'm going to start bringing that out slightly. And as I say, you don't want to be too neat with this, because the point is that you want it to look a little bit organic. You don't want it to look too structured. So I've probably made my line a little bit too straight. So I'm going to go in with some of this pink and I'm going to draw this out a little bit. Try and blend these colours together slightly. As I say, you need to work quite quickly with watercolours, because obviously the last thing you want is for your paper to start drying. But as you get happy with the colour that you're laying down, you're going to start switching to the purple. I'm going to start jotting that down. I'm going to bring some down into this corner here. Quite like the effect of that. I'd like to hold my brush quite loosely, because as I say, you want to be kind of moving the paint around, but you don't want it to become too uniform. Now I can already see that this is going to be a lot more pink than my previous one. So my previous one like this, I'd swap to the purple much sooner. But I can bring this in a bit if I wanted to. I think because this one I didn't actually start with the very light pink that I've used for this one. I'm going to start coming into this purple now, I think. Actually, I'm going to start mixing this down around here. Oh, I like that. I'm going to bring some up into this corner. It just looks too light up here. So I'm going to bring some of that purple in. There we go. I'm not quite happy with how light this pink is in the middle. I think I'm going to come back in with some of this darker pink. Oh, that's very dark. Let's wash this brush off a little bit more. I think I'm going to bring this pink in a bit more. Not quite happy with how white that is. So now I'm going to bring some of this purple in a bit higher up. And that's the beauty of watercolours. If you change your mind, you can add more paint here, there and everywhere. You don't want to add too many colours because you might make it brown. But what's really lovely with watercolours is they're quite forgiving. You can change your mind if you want to. So now I'm going to start bringing in some of this blue shade, dabbing it across the top of this purple. Now when you move from the purple to the blue, you might find that it requires a bit more mixing. It's not as close in shade as the pink and the purple, so you want to kind of blend it out a little bit better. Got some of this darker purple that I'm going to kind of dab in between, kind of blend it out a little bit more. I quite like the effect of that. Now I'm going to come in with a slightly darker blue. Now the lady that did this in the tutorial that I watched, she came and kind of went all over the place a little bit more than I have. But what she did do is when she was doing the blue at the top, she was doing the blue at the bottom. I haven't done that for any of mine. I've kind of gone with one side at a time. I'm not really too sure. I think I just like to see how it pans out before I commit to those colours on the other side, because it's much easier to mop up one end than it is to have to do both. Bring some of that in. I'm going to bring some of this dark purple in. I want quite a bit of this dark purple at the top. I'm quite liking that this is going to be quite different to the last one that I did. And then I want some of this darker blue up in here. Oh, I like that. And then the last colour that I finished with is I did add a little bit of black to the corners. So you only want a tiny little bit of this, because I didn't realise how far that black would go. And just kind of blend it out into the blue. Do the same this end. Oh, it's very wet down here, so that's why I've got my tissue ready. Gonna mop some of that water up. So it's good to have this to hand. Dab it along the bottom. I can go back in and add a bit of paint there if I need to. A bit more of this black. Bring that up. Okay, I need to just kind of go in along the bottom here get rid of some of this blue and black from here. I'm going to come in with this colour here, and come in with this colour, a bit of this colour. Oh, there we go. Kind of mix that in a little bit. Now, I do find some of these lines a little bit too rigid, so all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water, but I'm going to tap it off. I really don't want too much water on my brush. I'm going to kind of just come in here, kind of muddle up the lines a little bit. A little bit more blue here. Just kind of want to, as I say, muddy up those lines slightly. Mix it around a little bit. And that's the basic background done. Now the next step that you're going to want to do is take a little bit of kitchen roll or paper towel or something that you have, scrunch it up a little bit. I'm just using toilet roll because, as I say, I just had some to hand. And you want to kind of scrunch it up, don't do it neatly, make it really scrunched, and just gently just dab, moving the tissue as you go so you're not using the same bit, and it just takes off a little bit of the paint. And it's what kind of just gives it that little bit of depth within the colours. And take a small bit off. If there's any bits that you take a bit too much off and you're not happy, you can always go in with a wet brush and just smooth them back out again. That's completely up to you. And then you need to let this dry completely before you go in and add the white. So I'm going to leave this tonight now, and then I'll carry on filming tomorrow and show you the completed project. Okay, so I've let this dry overnight. You don't need to leave it that long. It was really late last night when I finished this. Now we're going to add the white splatters on the top. So the easiest way to do this is get a really wet brush, make the paint really, really wet, but use quite a thick brush. I'm using the 6 again, but have a second brush to hand. Because when you have loaded the paintbrush up, you're going to use this brush to tap this one, and then it will create the splatters over the top of your picture. Not doing very, oh, big splat then. And obviously the closer you get, the bigger the splats will be. And the further away from the paper, the smaller the splats. There you go, that's coming out a bit better. Sorry if the noise is a bit annoying. And then when you're happy with the amount of splats that you've got, you're going to go in with one of your thinner brushes. And this is where you're going to create the little stars. So I tend to find some of the larger blobs and then drag them out, turn these into stars. You don't want blobs too big on here anyway. Some of them I drag out to be 8-point stars, like that, and then others I just go up and down those ones. So you can do as many or as little as you want, and wherever you want on the paper. Oops. That's going to have to be one now. And then that's it, that's the final step. This bit only takes a few seconds. As I say, you just have to let the paper dry completely before you add those, otherwise they're going to run slightly. So once you've done that, you can peel this off of the backing. And that is your watercolour painting completed. So I'm just going to go back through some of the ones I did before. So that's the one with the shimmer. I'm not sure I like the white splats on that. I don't think they show up very well. That was the previous Galaxy one. As you can see same colours but a completely different effect. And then the green and blue one. So that's my quick tutorial for today. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!